Okay. Good morning, Boker Tov. So, moving on, we are on continuing Masechet Makkot, Daf Yutet Amud Bet, near the bottom of the page, discussing today, see how far we get, possibly up to the next Mishnah. We're discussing the sugya of, again, Maaser Sheni. And we've been discussing, we've seen the two Mishnayot, we won't repeat everything, but we've seen the two Mishnayot that have mentioned Maaser Sheni, the fact there's a prohibition to eat Maaser Sheni, both but tum'ah, whether the maaser is tamei, whether the person is tamei, and also to eat it outside the walls of Yerushalayim. Yesterday we began to see that the Gemara actually says that this isur lav of eating maaser sheni outside Yerushalayim only applies regarding the lav, regarding the chiyuv of Makkot. That would only apply if the maaser had been brought into Yerushalayim and is then taken out of Yerushalayim. But if it had never entered in the first place, so it's still going to be forbidden, it's not going to be an Isur Makkot. And that's where we ended off yesterday. Let's pick that up. We're on, for those who have the standard edition of the Gemara, we're on Daf Yutet Amud Bet. We're about 5, 6, maybe 7 lines from the bottom. And so it says the Gemara, Ma'ei matai chayavin alav. Excuse me. So from when is one going to be chayav? From when is this Isur Malkot going to kick in? Answers the Gemara, Mishra Pnei Chuma. Once it has seen the inside of the walls, literally, meaning once you have brought it into Yerushalayim and then taken it out. But that's what Rivan emphasized over here, and his Perush explained to us, said it means the Aile Vavke, you had brought it in and then taken it out. Where do we learn that from? And then from the juxtaposition of the two psukim, Maitama, Dama Akra Lifnei Hashem Elokecha Tochalenu. Uchtiv lo tochal lechol bisharecha. One pasuk says Lifnei Hashem. Lifnei Hashem we know refers to Maaser Sheni inside Yerushalayim, before Hashem, in the place of where the Mikdash is. That's where you can eat it. And another pasuk says Lo tochal lechol bisharecha. You cannot eat it in your cities, within your gates. So kol heicha dekarinan be Lifnei Hashem Elokecha Tochlenu. Whenever we say would apply to it, right? Lifnei Hashem Elokecha Tochlenu, eat it before Hashem, i.e., this Maaser Sheni has been brought into Yerushalayim, and that command now applies. Kol heicha dekarinan be Lifnei Hashem Elokecha Tochlenu. Karinan be lo tochal lechol bisharecha. We read about it, we apply on it as well the pasuk of lo tochal bisharecha. You can't eat it within your own gates. Kol heicha dekarinan be. V'kol heicha de lo karinan be lifnei Hashem Elokecha Tochlenu lo karinan be lo tochal lechol bisharecha. But if we don't say about it, eat it before Hashem, i.e., it's not before Hashem yet, it hasn't come into Yerushalayim. If we don't say lo tochal lechol bisharecha either, and therefore that prohibition, that is sulav, has not yet kicked in. Okay, so that is the statement of the Gemara. That is Rabbi Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So at this point now, the Gemara challenges, because we have now a braita which is seemingly going to indicate to us that is not the case. That seemingly the challenge will be that even if you have Maaser Sheni, which has not been brought into Yerushalayim yet, that there is still going to be an Isur Lav. Let's see how the Gemara tries to prove this. So it says Meitive, challenge. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Kohen she'alta bi'ado teina shel teva. Amar teina zot trumata be'uktzah, maaser rishon b'tzfona, u'maaser sheni lidroma. So you have a Kohen she'alta bi'ado, who has in his hand a teina, a date. Tena would be a fig, right? This, but whatever is this fruit, which has not yet separated Trumot and Maasrot from it. Tena shel teva. So just remember, just again a brief recap. We have whatever produce begins as teva. What do we need to separate from it? We need to separate the truma first of all, right? And then we need to separate which goes to the Kohen, and then we need to separate Maaser Rishon, which goes to the Levi, and then we have to separate from the Maaser also the Truma. We have the Truma Gdola, and we then have the Trumat Maaser, right? Truma, which is taken from the Maaser Rishon, and then you have either Maaser Sheni or the Maaser Oni. So this Kohen, there are still bits which have to be separated The truma goes to the Kohen, but other parts not. Maser Rishon goes to the Levi, and this is still tevel. So you have this Kohen who has in his hand this fruit of tevel. Amar teina zo trumata beukta maser Rishon bitzvona maser sheni lidroma. So in this case, this is what's called kriyat Hashem, which is where truma, we've discussed previously, there are two separate mitzvot, perhaps two separate mitzvot, maybe two aspects of the same mitzvah, but when one separates trumat and maasrot, there is number one, the kriyat Shem, the designation of a certain part of that produce to go to the Kohen, to the Levi, truma, maaser, whatever it may be, and then there's actually taking that off and separating it. So in certain instances, certain situations, the designation of the truma, even if it has not actually been separated, may be sufficient. So here, this is what happens. The Kohen designates. He says, "Tenazo trumata beukza." So he's saying which part of the fruit will become each part of the trumat and masrot. So trumata beukza, by its stem, that will be truma. Maser Rishon bitzvona. So on the northern side, the top side of it will be the maser Rishon, and maser sheni lidruma. Maser sheni be on the other side. Sorry, does somebody have a question? Not yet. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So again, says the Kohen, says Trumata beukza maser rishon bitzvona maser sheni lidroma. Now, vehi shnat maser sheni. This is obviously if he's separating maser sheni, this is in a year of maser sheni. Vehu b'Yerushalayim. And he is in Yerushalayim. It's going to be significant. Okay, that is the assumption. That's what the case is talking about here. Or alternatively, if it is a year of Maser Ani, it says on Maser Ani vehu bigvulin. Right. So if it's a year of the third or sixth year of Maser Ani, then even if he's in the gvulin, meaning even if he is outside Yerushalayim, and he separates the Maser Ani. Right? What do you see from here? The point is, this Kohen he's going to eat it. So if it's a year of Maser, if it's Maser Ani, can be eaten anywhere. But if it's a Maser Sheni, that's why the assumption is that it's only in Yerushalayim. By the way, just in terms of the years, I'll just mention, because this gets a bit complicated. Sometimes when you buy fruits and vegetables, if you buy from a place that has a hechsher, so you don't have to worry, right? You buy from a big supermarket, or you buy from a reliable seller where you know there's a hechsher, trumot and maasrot have been separated, that's okay. But what if somebody bought from a place that didn't have, or you don't know, or you wanted to separate? So when we think about which year of the cycle we're in order to know, currently in the first year, right? Because last year was the Shemitah, but in order to know whether we separate Maser Sheni or Maser Ani, that does not whatever year of the cycle you're in for the fruit does not necessarily go by the year that you're in now. If we're dealing with vegetables, it goes by the year you're in now, because for vegetables, the time which establishes it is the time of likita, the time where it is harvested, where it is picked. But when it comes to fruit, we go by what's called chanata, which is essentially when the fruit ripens, gets about a third ripened, begins to blossom on the tree. Whenever that took place, that is the year of that fruit. So you might be buying fruit in the third year, but it actually belongs to the second year. Or what may still happen now is that's why you might be buying fruit in the supermarket now, which is still Shemitah fruit, right? There are no Shemitah vegetables at this point. There might still be some fruits which are from Shemitah because the Chanatah took place in the seventh year. But okay, the point is that this was fruit of whether it was of the year of Maser Sheni or Maser Ani. Okay, so again, what has happened? This Kohen has taken this date. It was Tevel. He's now designating that part of it now should be Truma, part of it should be Maser Rishon, part of it should be Maser Sheni in Yerushalayim, or Maser Ani anyway. So now says the Gemara, he then eats it. Now over the daf, Lokeh Achat. He's going to get one set of lashes, one set of malkum. The zar she'achala, if it was a zar, however, if it was a non-Kohen who did the same thing, she'achala lokeh shtayim, and he's going to eat it, he's going to get two sets of lashes. Okay, why would the Kohen get one, and why would the zar get two? So he says, it says Rivan at the top of the Kaf Amud Aleph, lokeh achat, the lo tzia midei tevel b'kriyat shem zeh. by this designation, he has not actually prevented it from being teva. V'ka'achil maser rishon hatavul l'trumat maser. V'ka'ava alav de teva. Right. When he then eats, he's now eating it. He's designated it. So there's truma, there's maser rishon, there's maser sheni. When he eats the maser rishon, remember maser rishon goes to the Levi, but maser rishon you still need to separate trumat maser, which is a separate portion of the maser, which becomes truma. So he has not separated the trumat maser. He's not designated that. So because of the maser rishon, this is still considered teva, and that is going to be the yisur. That's going to be the lav, which the kohen is therefore transgressing. I love the teva. Ava yisur truma the ka'achil leika. The kohenu, but there's no yisur of eating truma because he's a kohen. He's allowed to eat truma. Okay, that's why if it's a kohen, we say lokechat. The Gemara continues. Zar shachala lokeshtaim. Right, if he's a zar, if he's a non-kohen, he's going to get two. Why two? One for the fact that he's eaten tevel, the tevel of maser rishon, and one for the fact that he's eaten truma. He's a zar, he's a non-kohen, he's not allowed to eat truma. So continues the Gemara. She'ilu batchila achala eina lokeh achat. Right, ironically, the zar is in a worse off position. If he had eaten it before designating this all these trumat masrot, he would only get one set of malkot. Why? Because then he's eaten tevel, but he's not eaten truma. Here he's eaten truma and he's eaten tevel. Okay, so that is the case. The case is you have a kohen. We're going to focus on the well either way. If we have the kohen, there's only one set of malkot for the tevel. If it is the zar, it's going to be two, one for tevel and one for truma. Now, what did it say? It said this was the case where if it was a year of maser sheni, it was in Yerushalayim. Right, so tama the ite b'Yerushalayim. Because he was in Yerushalayim, that's why for the kohen it would only be one isur, and for the zar it would be two. But hag b'gvulin, we can infer, because the Gemara actually made a distinction, right? It said if it's a maser sheni, then this is the case in Yerushalayim. If it's maser ani, it will be the case everywhere. The inference is that if it was maser sheni, this would not be the case everywhere. This would only be the case in Yerushalayim. If it was outside of Yerushalayim, the din would be different. So he says, "Tama de'ite b'Yerushalayim." That is the reason why this is the case. Ha b'gvulin, if it was outside anywhere else, lokeh shalosh. The inference is that there would be three sets of malkot, right? One set for having eaten truma, one for having eaten the tevel, one for having eaten the truma, one for having eaten the maser sheni outside Yerushalayim, right? But da'af al gav the lav ro'eh pnei choma, even though it had never been inside, right? So this is our kasha. We began by saying, with a member of Rabbi Yochanan that said, when would one get malkut for eating maser sheni outside of Yerushalayim? Only when you had brought the maser sheni into Yerushalayim and then you had taken it out. But we have this case of the kohen or the zar who has this tevel, and he designates the name for all this tevel, designates part of it to be maser sheni, and we say only if he's in Yerushalayim he gets one or two sets of malkut. He does not get the malkut for eating maser sheni. In other words, from the fact that the Gemara says that he doesn't get malkut for eating maser sheni in Yerushalayim, we understand that he does get malkut for eating the maser sheni outside of Yerushalayim. But in that case, it was never there in the first place, and therefore that's a contradiction to what we said previously. Right? Afal gav the lav ro'eh pnei choma, even though it had never been inside the city. So answers the Gemara. That's where Ivan got the language from before. No, your inference is incorrect. Meaning the inference is correct, but it would be that there would be an extra set of malkut for eating maser sheni only if it had been in Yerushalayim and it had been taken out. The Aili Vafke. Right, says Rivan over here. Let's read from where it says Hachi Garsinan. He says Hachi Garsinan Tama the Maser Sheni b'Yerushalayim u'Maser Ani b'Gvulin. Right, the reason why it said that you get two sets of malkut is because when it's Maser Sheni in Yerushalayim and Maser Ani is outside, Therefore, we make the inference. Maser Sheni b'gvulin lokeh shalosh. That if it was Maser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim, outside of the walls, you'd get 3. And then we answer, no, that was the case of the Aili v'avkei. The Aili, meaning you brought it in, L'Yerushalayim, v'kara le'Hashem, and you designated it. You designated it as Truma and as Maser. V'hadar avkei chutz, and then you took it outside. Dechaza Maser Sheni pnei choma, that the Maser Sheni had been inside the city. Hilkach lokeh shalosh. Therefore, there are 3. Therefore, there are 3 sets of Malkut here. So now says the Gemara, if that's the case, if that's the way we want to understand it, 5th line, right? If so, Maila Meimra. If so, what is the case? What are we saying? There's not really any chiddush. We already knew all of that, right? Again, Rivan. Just to remind you, the Rivan is Rabbi Yehuda Bar Natan, is a Talmud of Rashi, because at this point we saw the final commentary which Rashi gave on the Masechet before he passed away, and so the Rivan where Rashi would normally be, but it's now Rivan. He says, "I achi ma'ila meimra tebish lama iamat maser sheni b'gvulin lo keshalosh afagav de lo chaza pnei choma ashminan tova." Right? If you were to say, I understand this whole Meimra, this case, the Kohen, etc. If you were to teach me that Maser Sheni outside Yerushalayim gets 3 sets of Malkot, even though it had never been inside the walls, then it's a chiddush. I understand why you need to say that. It should be chayav for it, even though it did not yet was not yet brought inside the walls. And this whole Memra would have been taught in order to teach us that diuk, to learn that inference. Of what, even though the case is taught explicitly is about it when it's in Yerushalayim, it's implicitly teaching us the case where it's outside as well. If you're saying that the case, that the only case you can learn from the inference is where it had actually been brought into the walls and then taken out, you don't need it. I mean, this is completely obvious. And you don't need its inference either. The hapshita, it's obvious. Because we know that a Kohen is going to get Malkut for Tevel, and the Zar is going to get Malkut for Truma and for Maser Sheni outside the walls. Okay, hasn't taught us anything. So why do we need it? So if we think about the case, see, the Gemara will explain now what the chiddush is. Right? What's the difference between the ordinary case? What we already knew, that if one had Maser Sheni, that the Maser Sheni was brought into Yerushalayim and then was taken out, that one would get Malkut for eating it outside of the walls of the city, versus the case where one had Tevel, and one had Tevel, which they designated it to be Maser Rishon, Maser Sheni, Truma, right? But it all remained together, and that was brought into Yerushalayim, and that was then taken out. What's the difference between the two cases? So there's one clear and obvious difference, and the obvious difference is, think about it, that in the first case we have a fruit that we can point to, that we can say this is Maser Sheni. So it's been designated as Maser Sheni. It's been separated as Maser Sheni. I'm taking it, I'm bringing it, I know it's got the Kedusha of Maser Sheni, I'm bringing it into Yerushalayim, I'm taking it out, I can point to it and I can say this apple or this fig or this date, whatever it may be, is Maser Sheni. It's been brought into the city and it's been taken out. Yeah, we're saying a very different case. We're saying we take our fig or our date or our apple, whatever it may be, and it's all together, and I'm saying that part of it's been designated to be Truma. Part of it's been designated to be Maser Rishon. Part of it's been designated to be Maser Sheni. But it hasn't been separated. I can't point to the fruit and say, this is the Maser Sheni. It's in there somewhere. Okay, so the question is, when it's been designated, but it has not yet been separated, does that have the same status as the Maser Sheni itself? And therefore, when that has been brought into the walls and then it's been taken out, is that going to be the same thing? Is that going to have this? Is this thing going to apply on it already? And that is the machloket over here. So that's what the chiddush is in this case, right? So says the Gemara, if so, what are you coming to teach us? What is the chiddush at all? So Acha b'mayaskin, and here's the case. What are we dealing with? Kagon da'ailinu betivlayu. When you brought it in, sorry, maybe even more of a difference than what I just said. Maybe if you brought in that fruit before it had even been designated, right? So it wasn't yet Maaser Sheni, it was Tevel. And the question is, right? Kasavar matanot shelo urmu kamisha humu damyan. Do we say that matanot you're referring to, Trumot Masrot, that have not yet been separated, do we judge them as if they have been separated? V'savar Rabbi Yossi matanot shelo urmu kamisha humu damyan. Rabbi Yossi holds, right? In other words, that Braita holds that it is, and Rabbi Yossi holds that it is not. Again, in other words, the din is we say once we bring the Maaser Sheni into Yerushalayim, I now say that if I take it out, it now has the din that I'm going to get Makkot for eating it. That I understand would be the case when it's already Maaser Sheni, when you bring it in. But what happens if you bring it into Yerushalayim and it's not yet Maaser Sheni? You haven't separated anything, it's Tevel. Now you take it out and now you separate it. Do I say that since it's already been in Yerushalayim, it has that din? Or do I say that only now it's become Maaser Sheni? It's like almost Panim Chadashot, right? It's something new. And what happened to it before when it was Tevel was irrelevant. That's the difference. And that's going to be the Chiddush over here. So, right, Hacha b'mayaskinan. Just read it again. Kegon da'ailinu betivlayu. You brought it in its tevel state, right? It says the Rivan, da'aile betivla, lehaiteina b'Yerushalayim. That you brought that fig into Yerushalayim when it was still tevel. Dekaltu mechitzot, that the walls absorbed it, so to speak. The Maaser Sheni that will in future be separated from it, that's considered as if it's been inside the walls, because objectively it was there. Right? V'kasava matanot shelo homu kamisha homu damyan v'dami kamad ayel Maaser Sheni b'einei. It says if you had brought Maaser Sheni into the city, davalei ra'apnei choma v'ilkach yavka. Then when you take it out, but the same as if you took it out when it was tevel or not. So that is a machlok. Kasava back in the Gemara. Kasava matanot shelo umu kamish umu damyan. V'savar b'Yossi matanot shelo umu kamish umu dami. Right, and Rabbi Yossi holds that. So this is therefore the resolution to the law case. We started off by saying, right, Rabbi Yossi Amar Rabbi Yochanan said it's only if you've brought the food, the Maaser Sheni, into Yerushalayim and then taken it out that you would get Makkot. Right? We then had a challenge of that. We had the right in the name of Rabbi Yossi, who said this case of the Kohen that said, what if you take Tevel and you've just designated part of it to be Maaser Sheni, that if it's in Yerushalayim, there'd only be 2 sets of Makkot for that. But the implication was that if it was that if it was outside of Yerushalayim, there would be an additional set of Makkot. There'd be an additional set of Makkot. So that seemed to contradict what the Gemara said beforehand, that you can't get that there's no Makkot for Maaser Sheni, which has not yet been brought into Yerushalayim. So then we said, no, well, the case here of Rabbi Yossi is the case where it already has been brought into Yerushalayim, and then it's taken out. And that's where you would get the Makkot. So we said, that's obvious. We know that. What's it trying to teach us? It's trying to teach us that Rabbi Yossi is talking about a different case. He's talking about a different case whereby if not the Maaser Sheni itself has been brought into the city, but the Tevel has already been brought into the city. But because of the fact that Maaser Sheni is going to be separated from that in future, we consider as if already the Maaser Sheni has been brought in, and therefore there's going to be Malkum. In other words, the kasava matanot shelo homu kami shehumu kamisha humu damya. So now this is actually the Gemara is asking a question. It says, wait a minute. Sava Rabbi Yossi matanot shelo humu kamisha humu damya. Meaning everything we've said until now makes sense. It's based on this assumption that the truma which has not yet been separated, the maaser which has not yet been separated, we judge it for this halacha as if it already has. But here the Gemara is asking, and this was said in the name of Rabbi Yossi. But we know from elsewhere that in fact Rabbi Yossi does not hold this way, right? Savar Rabbi Yossi matanot shelo humu kamisha humu dami. Meaning, does Rabbi Yossi really hold that the Trumot and Masrot that have not yet been separated are going to have the status regarding coming into the walls? V'atanya, don't we learn in a Braita the following? Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says the name of Rabbi Yossi. The following, we have here a machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Lo nechlaku Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel al perot shelo nigmaru melachtan ve'avru b'Yerushalayim שיפדה במעשר שני שלהם ויאכל בכל מקום. Just read through a bit more and then we'll translate. ועל מה נחלקו? על פירות שנגמרה מלאכתן ועברו בירושלים. שבית שמאי אומרים יחזיר מעשר שני שלהם ויאכל בירושלים, בית הלל אומרים ייפדה ויאכל בכל מקום. Okay, so what are we dealing with here? We have Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel say the following. Says Rabbi Yossi, לא נחלקו בית שמאי ובית הלל על פירות שלא נגמרה מלאכתן ועברו בירושלים שיפדה מעשר שני שלהם. If you have fruits where we have לא נגמרה מלאכתן, meaning we've discussed before as well that there's a certain stage in the harvesting, in the processing of the crops from when the requirement to separate in terms of even if you're going to eat achilat arai, from when the requirement to separate trumot and masrot kicks in, that is what's called gmar melachtan. It's going to be different for different fruits and different crops, etc. So when we know that when you bring the fruits into Yerushalayim, aside from the fact that you can't bring them out. Aside from the fact that you can't bring them out and eat them outside of Yerushalayim, you also cannot perform pidyon, right? Maser, as we've discussed, Maser Sheni can be redeemed before it comes into Yerushalayim. Once it comes in, it can't be. So, say Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel like this. Both agree that when you have perot shelo nigmar melachtan, that have not reached yet the stage of gmar melacha, ve'avru b'Yerushalayim, and even if they came into Yerushalayim, that we can still at this point still perform pidyon for the maser for the maser sheni. Both Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai agree on that. You can perform pidyon, you can eat them wherever you want. So what is the machloket between them? Al perot shenigmaru melachtan ve'avru b'Yerushalayim. Regarding fruits where the Gmar Melacha was finished, okay, again, we're still talking about in the case before you've separated Trumot and Maasrot, but you've now reached the stage in the processing of the fruits whereby you would be required to do so, and now they come into Yerushalayim. So Beit Shammai Omrim Yachzir Maser Sheni Shelahem V'Yachal B'Yerushalayim. In other words, Beit Shammai say from this point, even though once it's been brought in. Right, even though you've not yet separated Maser Sheni, at this point, when you separate the Maser Sheni, it has to stay in Yerushalayim and it has to be eaten there. Beit Hillel omrim yipadeh v'yachal makom makom. Beit Hillel say no, you can still perform pidyon, and you can eat it wherever you want. In other words, what are they arguing about? When you've brought in this tevel into the walls of Yerushalayim, according to Beit Shammai, you can't, the Maser Sheni, it's considered as if Maser Sheni has come into the city already. And according to Beit Hillel, it's considered, no, you could still perform pidyon, you could still take it out. This is a din, this is what's called kaltu mechitzot, meaning that the walls have absorbed it, the walls have absorbed the fruit for the sake of Maser Sheni, being in Yerushalayim, being that it has to be eaten there. So this sounds very, very similar to what we said before. But Beit Shammai are the ones that are saying, that it's considered as if the Maaser Sheni is already in Yerushalayim, even though it hasn't been designated. But Beit Hillel is saying that it's not. And remember, this is Rabbi Yossi bringing this whole memra, and he brings the opinion of Beit Hillel. So if Rabbi Yossi quotes Beit Hillel as saying that if the tevel is coming into Yerushalayim, but you've not yet separated Maaser Sheni, you could still perform pidyon and you could still eat it outside. In other words, what he seems to be saying is that matanot shelo hormu, that when you've not yet separated the trumot umashrot, then it's as if we don't judge it as if it's already Maaser Sheni. And therefore, in the case where you would then take it outside of the walls, you would still be able, you would still be able to eat it. You wouldn't consider it as if it's Maaser Sheni, which has been brought into the city. Right? It says the Gemara now, Isa kadatach matanot shelo umu kamisha mudamyan. If you say that, what we said beforehand, that even those matanot, those trumot and mashrot, which have not formally been separated yet, but we judge them, they're similar to as if they have been. So then we say, Hakal tuhu mechitzot. It's already come inside the walls. It's already, we have this din of the walls that absorbed it, kaltuh mechitzot, and you should not be able to be podeh and to eat it wherever you want. So that is the contradiction. That is the contradiction in the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. First we brought the bright at the bottom of the previous Amud in the name of Rabbi Yossi to teach us what we learned out from that the only chiddush that brighter seemed to be teaching was that if you had Maaser Sheni, which had not yet been separated, and you brought that tevel into Yerushalayim and then took it out, and then separated Maaser Sheni, well, that's Maaser Sheni that has the din, that has been in Yerushalayim, it's come out, and you would get Makkot. That was Rabbi Yossi. Over here, we're saying, not for the din of bringing it in and then taking it out, but then of once this food comes into Yerushalayim, do we say, Kaltur Mechitzot? Do we say that it's now considered that Maaser Sheni has entered the city and it has to be eaten there? Well, according to Beit Shammai, no, but according to Beit Hillel, yes, even though you've not yet separated it. So that is a contradiction in the opinion of Rabbi Yossi from the first to the second Memra. So now the Gemara gives two answers to this. Two answers, because we're dealing with two different dinim. So answer number one is Rabbah. Amar Rabbah, we are now 4 lines above the Mishnah, 5 lines above the Mishnah, the last two words in the line. Amar Rabbah, mechitza lechol deoraita, mechitza liklot drabanan, v'chi gazul rabanan, kite bene betivla lo gazul rabanan. Says Rabbah, we're dealing with 2 different halachot here. One of them is halacha deoraita, one of them is halacha drabanan. Right? The first halacha, which is that if the food has, we learned that from Psukim, that if the Maaser Sheni has been brought within the walls, and you then take it outside the walls and eat it outside, that is going to be an isur lav, isur makkot. That is an isur doraita. So therefore, for this din of the walls of this mechitza that is doraita, we consider it even if you've brought it in and have not yet designated the Maaser Sheni from the tevel, that is still considered that it's been brought in. However, the second case of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai of kaltuhu mechitzot, meaning here we're not talking about performing an isur of eating Maaser Sheni where you're not allowed to. Here we're asking, once the Maaser Sheni has been brought into Yerushalayim, can we now perform pidyon? Right, and that is a din drabanan, which they said that the mechitza absorbs over there. So maraba mechitza lechol deoraita. In order for eating it outside, that wall that is considered a din deoraita, and that would be a problem. Mechitza liklot, but bring it inside, not being able to do a pidyon, that is din drabanan. Chigazu rabanan. When Rabbanan made this gezerah, when they made this decree, ki ite beinei, that they made the decree where you brought Maaser Sheni as is, right? But betivlei lo gazu rabanan. But if you had brought in tevel, so then Rabbanan had not made this decree on it, and therefore that would be permitted. That is answer number one. Answer number two says the Gemara, Vinama kegon denakit le bekanya. So we saw this previously, we saw this yesterday as well, something similar, and the Gemara is going to go back to it. Ravina says, no, the case is something else over here. The case is the nakit le bekanya, that you were carrying the Maaser Sheni, you were carrying it on a stick that you were carrying behind you. Right? So when you come in and when you come into the city, in fact, the case was that you have the Maaser Sheni together with, here the difference is not that the Maaser Sheni is not been separated from the tevel. This would apply to any Maaser Sheni, but it's that has not actually come into the city over here because you're holding that on a stick and you're holding it behind you. So this was a question that the Gemara asked before yesterday, where we said, what happens if the person walks into Yerushalayim, but they've got the Maaser Sheni is not inside the walls yet either. That's on a stick they're holding behind them. What would be the case there? And we said Teiku. So here says the Gemara, it's no longer, if we accept the answer of Ravina, it's actually no longer a Teiku. So he says, V'tifshot b'yad Rav Papa. We can this way understand the answer to Rav Papa's question above. So just have a look here at the Rivan, towards the end of the narrow lines. It says Ravina Amar. He says, Ha dedaikinan la'el, ha bigvulin lokesh shalosh, v'kabayit ma'ila meima. Right. So in our case, in the second case, the first case, Rabbi Yossi, where we said the case of the Kohen who had a Teinah and he designated the Truma, he would only get one set of Makkot. And if it was a Zar, he would get two sets of Makkot. And we said all of that was in Yerushalayim with the Maaser Sheni. But we made the inference, if it was outside Yerushalayim, then you get three sets of Makkot for eating the Maaser Sheni as well. So what exactly is the case there? So he says, this, which we made the inference that if it's outside Yerushalayim, you get three sets of Makkot. You said, what are you teaching me? What's the Chiddush? It was necessary for this case. We gave one answer before, but he has a different answer. That you were outside, but you weren't really outside because you were inside, but you had this Maaser on a stick and you're holding it behind you. That we say that is considered as if it's come to. In other words, if the fruits had not been brought into Yerushalayim proper, but the person had been standing there and had them on a stick, so that behind him, so that's considered as if they've seen the walls. That's considered as if they've come in. And now, when you go out, the prohibition would apply. And that was the question of Papa asked yesterday. We didn't have an answer for it. Here he says, according to Ravina says, according to this answer, that case would be prohibited as well. That would also be Isur Malkot. Right, so those are the two answers. Either Rabbah says, difference between the two cases, that one is Doraita and one is Drabanan, right? And in that case, then we would still say that for the case Doraita, for eating outside the walls, that even if you'd brought the fruits in as tevel, then it would still apply. According to the second answer of Ravina, we're saying, no, this has got nothing to do with tevel. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with Yef Maaser Sheni proper. The first bright is teaching you the Chiddush, that if you had walked into the city and you were holding this behind you on a stick, that's considered as if that tevel, that Maaser Sheni, has come into the city as well. But if you had brought tevel in proper, then that is not considered, because we don't say in any case, according to Ravina, we don't say in any case that matanot shelo hormu tehormuda. Right? So that would be enough between those two answers. So we're up to the Mishnah now on Daf Kaf Amud Aleph. We will begin on the next year. Next week, I'm going to be away. Next week there won't be a shiur. I'm going to be away Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as well. So stay tuned. We'll have a little bit of a break, but we will continue.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right,
Rabbi.
thank you.